As we move into the final third of Ice Queendom, I think it's pretty safe to say that Team RWBY is in a bit of a dire situation right now. Blake and Yang have both been booted a ways out of the kingdom, and RWBY has now fallen victim to another nightmare, being trapped within her own dream world. Not to mention, they're also running low on coins to be able to manipulate the dream and help themselves out of situations such as this one. So how exactly are they going to recover and then defeat the nightmare on top of this? That is what we are going to address in today's video, as well as a couple things that many people have been suggesting that will play a key factor in the coming episodes of Ice Queendom, such as RWBY's silver eyes and this new blade that Jaune brought into the dream with him. Now, first and foremost, how they're going to escape the situation that they're currently in, I think is pretty straightforward. RWBY is going to have to escape from her own dream world, likely with the help of Jaune, given that he has the sword, which seems to be acting as a relic and kind of a deterrent for the nightmare, a representation of his own immunity to the nightmare, because she is in close proximity to that, and also she fell victim to the nightmare within a dream already. I think that's probably going to maybe weaken the nightmare's hold on RWBY, so she'll be able to either break free on her own, or Jaune will be able to enter the dream in some way and help RWBY escape. Because we do know at this point in the RWBY series, RWBY and Jaune are fairly close. They have a mutual respect for each other as team leaders and are actually friends. In fact, Jaune was the first person that RWBY met upon coming to Beacon. So if Jaune was going to help RWBY out of her dream, I would completely understand that. Especially a lot more so than Jaune helping Weiss out of her dream, considering that, you know, Weiss and Jaune really aren't that close as of the end of Volume 1. So I think RWBY is going to have to escape from her dream and then use one of her last coins. I think she still has at least one left. We know that Jaune is completely out of coins, but RWBY will use one of her last coins, or her very last coin, to create a door that can then connect to a door that Blake and Yang will create to allow them to reconnect. Blake and Yang will probably find the last of the 4 relics that were created in Weiss's dream, and then once they reunite, they will be able to go and take on the nightmare together. But how will they then defeat the nightmare? The recommendation that I've seen most commonly since my last review is that RWBY is going to have to use the silver eyes. And admittedly, they are in a tough enough situation where using the Deus Ex eyeballs might be the reasonable conclusion to come to. However, I don't like the idea of RWBY having to use the silver eyes to escape this situation, and I also don't think it's very logical for that to be possible within the dream. First and foremost, the way that Ice Queendom has been set up, dealing with Weiss's inner emotions and the connection between the teammates, I think it would be a lot more impactful for it not to be just done in a flash, that things just get so desperate and RWBY's able to wipe out the nightmare instantly. It needs to be much more of a struggle and much more of a satisfying end, in my opinion. And on top of that, I have a feeling that RWBY couldn't even use the silver eyes within the dream, even if she wanted to, or even if the situation led to that point where it was desperate enough for her to activate them. And that's because within the dream, the abilities that everyone has is coming from the inner thoughts of Weiss for the most part, but also Jaune's abilities seem to be arising from his own dream since he is immune from the nightmare, or his own inner thoughts, and that might be the case for RWBY as well. Once she's able to wake up from her dream, she might gain some sort of immunity like Jaune, revert to her original appearance, and maybe bring along with her an extra weapon. Maybe something that will represent the silver eyes while not being the silver eyes themselves. But I'll touch on that in a moment once I get to Jaune's weapon and the sword that he brought with him. For now, with all of the abilities that are represented in the dream coming from someone's inner thoughts, I don't think it's possible for RWBY to be able to use the silver eyes within the dream, simply because no one knows about the ability of the silver eyes. At this point, at the end of Volume 1, none of Team RWBY nor Jaune know that the Silver Eyes has any special power. They just know that RWBY's eyes are colored silver, and that's it. None of them seem to know of any legends about silver-eyed warriors or anything like that. I just don't think it's possible for RWBY to activate the Silver Eyes within the dream. It just wouldn't really make sense. Now, when the nightmare is eventually defeated within the dream and escapes from Weiss's body, just like Jaune's did, well, this nightmare is going to be a lot more powerful, and thus there's going to be a battle resulting in the real world against the nightmare as well. that would be a situation where RWBY might be able to use the Silver Eyes, but again, that would not make sense. Because when that battle happens, there's going to be a lot of witnesses, and canonically, considering Ice Queendom is supposed to take place between Volumes 1 and 2, we know that RWBY had no idea of her Silver Eyes until she was told about it at the end of Volume 3. And similarly, no one else had any idea about them as well. So I don't think that RWBY is going to use the Silver Eyes in Ice Queendom. I just don't think it would make that much sense and wouldn't be a satisfying end to the overall story. Plus, when the Nightmare escapes into the real world outside of Weiss, then I would really love to see Jaune in combat, the Nightmare Hunter in action. Because Jaune really hasn't had that much time to shine in the series. Sure, Jaune was able to facilitate the entry into Weiss's dream, but nothing really more than that. And we know, as the Nightmare Hunter, that Jaune has, or should have, some decent capabilities. So I would really love to have Ice Queendom showcase what Jaune can do. Now, within the dream, there could also be the possibility that Jaune will play a larger role, given that he has this special, unique sword that he brought with him, that seems to represent his immunity to the Nightmare, that it is acting as a relic in and of itself. And as a few people suggested in the comments below my reviews, I'm leaning towards the idea that it is in fact a relic. Similar to the relics from Weiss's dream, except this relic being from Jaune's dream. Given how the relics seem to be a representation of something that the individual who is afflicted by the Nightmare cares about, in Weiss's case, this representing each of the members of Team RWBY, the relics that they received at Beacon Academy, that she was now part of a team, something more than just herself, showing that she does in fact care about each of them, or at least caring about being part of the team. And in Jaune's case, we saw what his insecurities were, that it was his armor making fun of him that he will never be able to live up to the family legacy of being a warrior. So it would make sense that his relics might reflect that to some extent. And with that being the case, one of his relics could easily appear as that massive sword, something that Jaune was able to bring with him into the dream. And although I understand the reasoning behind that, having Jaune's immunity represented by this blade, as well as the cloak, people were suggesting that the cloak that Jaune had and pretty much lost immediately was supposed to be the thing that would mask him from the Nightmare, allowing him to move freely without the Nightmare noticing him, but we saw the Nightmare just walk past him, or at least a drone that was infected by the Nightmare or representing the Nightmare walk completely past him and ignore him as if he was not there. So the cloak really didn't have much of an effect. Some people were saying that, well, at that point he was just regarded as a silly, nothing that the drones would pay any mind to, but if Jaune was a silly, the drone probably would have flagged him as an enemy and thrown him into the silly's jail regardless. So I don't really know how much extra help the cloak could have given him, but who knows, maybe Blake and Yang will find the cloak out in the snowy wasteland that they're in, bring it back with them through the door, give it to Jaune, and he'll be able to move freely, completely ignored by the Nightmare. Because at this point, the Nightmare certainly knows where he is and wants to get to him. But this blade certainly could be significant, and most likely will be. It is a ward against the Nightmare. But even though it would be very useful to use against the Nightmare, I kind of hope that it isn't used in the final battle against it, because I feel like the final battle should be between Team RWBY and the Nightmare. Having Jaune enter Weiss's dream and help with the journey to get to the Nightmare makes complete sense, given his previous immunity to the Nightmare and everything leading up to that, and his desire to save Weiss. However, I think the overall duty of saving Weiss should be up to Team RWBY, and Jaune, along with Pyrrha, should probably take on the Big Nicholas, using the blade to do that. And I still hold by the fact that the sword is meant to be used by Pyrrha. As we've seen thus far in Ice Queendom, in Weiss's own dream, the relics that are the keys to Weiss's heart aren't used by Weiss herself. They're used by the people who care about her. The same would likely hold true for the key to Jaune's heart. If this sword is truly a relic that was brought from Jaune's dream, a key to his own heart, well, it wouldn't make sense for the key to Jaune's heart being the thing to save Weiss, as that would really set the White Knight shippers off, which, by the way, I think is a good ship, but I don't think should be represented here in Ice Queendom given the focus on Team RWBY. But you know who would be a good fit to use the key to Jaune's heart, and who likely did use it at one point to rescue Jaune from the nightmare? Pyrrha. Considering we haven't really seen Pyrrha do much of anything in Ice Queendom thus far, though she did sing Mirror Mirror, which was fantastic and emotional and has been an excellent caretaker for the tiny Weisses, she hasn't done anything combat-wise, and we know how highly Weiss values Pyrrha's combat capabilities. So I think that is certainly going to be showcased in the next 4 episodes of Ice Queendom. And Jaune having this elegant regal sword would be the perfect opportunity for that to happen. So I still think that Pyrrha and Jaune are going to be the ones to take on pretty much Weiss's army, while the rest of Team RWBY fights against the Nightmare. And now we get to how I think the final battle against the Nightmare will unfold, because we saw how well it went the last 2 times. The first time, Team RWBY just got decimated. They weren't even able to touch the Nightmare, and Nightmare Weiss just wiped them out, sending them back to try entering the dream once again. And then the second time, Blake was able to land a hit against the Nightmare before all of them were just ejected from the kingdom. Or at least RWBY was supposed to be, but she was able to escape. So the third time's the charm, and this time I think it would be fitting for Team RWBY to use the relic for its intended purpose. The relics, as stated by Jaune, are keys to Weiss's heart. So I think what they should do is use it on the thing that's been standing in their way for this entire endeavor. On Nightmare Weiss herself. Free Weiss's mind from the Nightmare's control so that then all of Team RWBY can fight against the Nightmare to free Weiss's heart. If Weiss can regain control of her mind within the dream, then all of Team RWBY can join forces and attack the Nightmare, because the Nightmare really hasn't been the thing getting in Team RWBY's way whenever they've tried to attack it. Nightmare Weiss has been defending it, so if they are able to snap Weiss out of the Nightmare's control within the dream, then all of them can work to free Weiss together. And what would be really interesting to see, if they are able to snap Weiss out of it, and Weiss realizes the effort that her friends have gone to free her from the Nightmare, her opinion of them will change, become much more positive, and as a result, the abilities of RWBY, Blake, and Yang within the dream might become heightened to a similar level that Weiss's is within the dream. This would allow for a very epic and climactic battle against the Nightmare, as all of Team RWBY is using heightened abilities to fight against this massive, thorny Grimm. That's the ending I would love to see. And then when they eventually get to the real world, the Nightmare escapes, it'll, as I mentioned earlier, be likely a little bit larger than the one that was afflicting Jaune. And so a battle will have to ensue in the real world. I would really love for Jaune to be able to showcase his abilities, maybe Team Juniper to be able to get in on the fight. Depends on who's in the room at the time and what chaos could be caused afterwards. Because the Nightmare could spawn other nightmares, given how long it's been within Weiss's dream, and things of that nature. So after defeating it in Weiss's dream, it could play out a number of different ways, and we'll have to see. However, within the dream, I really would love to see all of Team RWBY fighting together. Another possibility is that when RWBY awakens from her own nightmare, and is able to defeat the Nightmare attacking her, that she'll gain some sort of extra equipment like Jaune did with his cloak and blade. RWBY will likely regain her original appearance, no longer being subject to the appearance from Weiss's mind, but having her own. That her weapon will be back to normal, the weapon that she's used to fighting with, and might possibly gain some extra weapon on top of that. I think it would be fitting if the item that RWBY has after awakening from her nightmare, if she does get anything new, is something representing the insecurity that seems most prominent with RWBY. That she would not become a good leader. So this relic would represent RWBY becoming a good leader. Possibly something that would be able to help snap Weiss out of it, and RWBY would be able to take charge. All of the team reunited, they would then fight the battle against the Nightmare with RWBY leading the attack. That would be something very significant. Another thing that we also know is very important to RWBY's character is the Silver Eyes, so perhaps the weapon that she will get, or the item she will get as a representation of her immunity to the Nightmare, might be something representing the Silver Eyes. Have a similar effect against Grimm that the Silver Eyes does, without actually being the Silver Eyes. Because canonically, given how Ice Queendom is meant to be canon adjacent, I really don't think it would fit that RWBY activates the Silver Eyes in and of itself. Something resembling it or representing the Silver Eyes in an object, that would be a lot more understandable within the dream world. Again, we will have to see. Hopefully all of my rambling on these ideas have made sense, that the Silver Eyes probably won't be activated, that I hope Jaune's weapon isn't the key to Weiss's heart, as it seems to be representative of Jaune's inner heart, and that would just kind of conflict with everything that we've seen in Ice Queendom thus far, but I do think it will be relevant, being used by himself and Pyrrha to take on some of Weiss's army and assist Team RWBY in freeing Weiss. And then it'll be up to Team RWBY themselves to fight off the nightmare within Weiss's dream. And I would really love for them to be able to snap Weiss out of it, that she can use her nightmare persona to fight against the nightmare along with the rest of her team. Hopefully that sums everything up. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think that the fight against the nightmare will unfold in this way? Do you think that it's likely? Do you have other ideas? Do you think that other things are going to play a factor? There are 4 more episodes left in Ice Queendom. I have a feeling most of episode 9 is going to focus on RWBY fighting against her own inner nightmare, her own inner demons, as well as Blake and Yang finding the last relic, learning what is inside the mansion where the Faunus are supposedly imprisoned. And then getting to the final battle, probably in episode 10, 11, and then the real-world battle against the nightmare in episode 12, wrapping everything up. That'd be my best guess, but who knows how things will play out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you did enjoy this video, want to see more like it, more Ice Queendom coverage, RWBY coverage in general, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.